The 2% we are now is absolutely not enough. When you look what Russia is producing now in 3 months, it's what the whole of NATO is producing from Los Angeles up to Ankara in a full year. And then Russia is not bigger than the Netherlands and Belgium combined as an economy. The two of you together is the Russian economy. And they are producing in 3 months what the whole of NATO is producing in a year. And don't forget, when you compare Russian numbers, that what you can buy in Russia for the same money is of course much more. Because they do not have our high salaries, they don't have our bureaucracy, they can move at a higher speed, and they have basically created a war economy, and their whole industry is now on a war footing.
With no expectations from the West or President Trump, Moscow is doubling down on its military strategy. By maintaining a steady pace of operations, Russia hopes to wear down Ukraine to the point of collapse. Ukraine's desperate search for peace guarantees, met only with calls for continued war, may push its elites to the realization that direct talks with Moscow are the only path to survival. Militarily, Russia's approach is crystal clear. While its forces cannot yet achieve strategic breakthroughs, they have learned to push through defenses systematically. Critics and analysts alike acknowledge that since spring of 2023, Russian advances have been slow but relentless, much like a steamroller. Politically, the Kremlin seeks to create conditions where Kiev will accept peace on Russian terms, renouncing its role as a military and political threat to Moscow. For this, the Kremlin is relying on the psychological impact of unfulfilled Western promises and the ongoing devastation of Ukraine's economy and society. Currently, in the Donbass, the Russian army is focusing on gaining a foothold in village near the logistical hub of Pokrovsk, with the objective of advancing further. In this way, the Russians aim to encircle the city partially, as the RBC Ukraine reports, citing Viktor Trebigov, the spokesperson for the Kortizha Operational and Strategic Group of Troops of Ukraine. In quotations, near Pokrovsk are a number of small settlements. These are Yelizavetovka, Lysivka, Zeleny, Prumin, and Novi Trud. The Russians are trying to capture every house there and move on, Trebigov said. Ukrainian military noted that the Russians are not directly advancing on Pokrovsk itself. However, they are trying to partially encircle the city and possibly reach the forest belt near the highway, where part of the city's supplies are delivered. So today's video will focus solely on the city of Pokrovsk and Russia's flanking maneuvers in that area. But the essence of today's report is to show you, through evidence, how any Russian breakthrough in that area could be fatal for Ukraine, psychologically, militarily, and even economically. Now I have 2 announcements to make. First, some of you have complained about my audio, so I did a recent community post informing of my aim to buy a Rode mic for just around $150 US, and I humbly ask anyone who can to contribute however they can to that cost. Second, some of you have also complained about the membership paywall that I have to see or grant access to the graphic combat footage that I use in my videos. And to this I say that YouTube already makes it difficult for channels like mine to sustain themselves financially via low AdSense revenue and ads restrictions, such as what happened on my previous video. Therefore, these are really the only alternative ways I have to gain some additional income to support my hours of research. In any event, if you don't wish to pay for membership, you can either donate via Super Thanks or simply enjoy the free content that I produce almost every day. But I must say I will continue to provide my membership program as is, which by the way, many of you have already joined and seem to enjoy. So shout out to my newest channel members, and with the housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's video. So despite Russia's continuous advances, there are some in the Ukrainian space who think, or perhaps I should say, they hope, that Russia will not be able to complete its objectives in Pokrovsk. In quotations, the Russian army currently lacks the strength to mount a large-scale flanking operation to encircle Ukraine's Pokrovsk on a broad front. This was stated by Ivan Tymochko, the head of the Reservist Council of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, on Ukrainian TV. In quotations again, Russian drones are already flying over Pokrovsk, and artillery is targeting the suburbs. However, it is too early to say that Russian troops have advanced close enough to the city to prepare an offensive on the outskirts. While the intensity of the fighting is high, it is not yet at that stage, Mr. Timochko explained. The situation is undoubtedly serious, he said. However, the Russians currently lack the forces to encircle Pokrovsk from the flanks. They may attempt to disrupt logistic routes on the western or eastern sides of the city, but so far they have been unable to completely cut off the city's supply lines and support. They also haven't resolved the issue of the Kupiansk salient, which remains a significant challenge for them. Additionally, they have failed to seize control of the road connecting Zaporizhia to Donetsk, which is vital for the Ukrainian military contingent. In this context, Russian forces are not in a position to launch a large-scale offensive on Pokrovsk, he added. Russian troops will attempt to cut off logistics and expand the front on the flanks, but it will likely be a creeping offensive, Timochko explained. Russian forces consist of different groups, and their commanders don't always work together, which causes internal competition, he said. They will try to attack on the flanks and head on, but they don't have the strength for a breakthrough. Even with 70,000 troops, they don't have enough for large-scale operations, the soldier added. Now, Pavlo Lakichuk, head of security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy and a retired Ukrainian Navy captain, had this to say about the Russian advance on Pokrovsk. In quotations, Russian maneuvers to outflank Pokrovsk from the south are already underway. The northern part of the Donetsk region may become a battleground in the coming months. The Russians are acting consistently, though not without difficulty. Pokrovsk is a logistics hub for our entire military group to the north and northeast of Pokrovsk. This includes Konstantinivka, Josivka, rare areas, and further on Chasiv Yar and Toretsk. All logistics go through Pokrovsk. Russians are primarily trying to cut these supply lines. A month or two ago, Russian forces attempted this by attacking from the front between Myrnograd and even further north of Myrnograd and Pokrovsk. Now, active attempts to cut the Pokrovsk-Konstantinivka route have resumed. They are also trying to disrupt logistics at the entrance to Pokrovsk. The Russian army is now approaching the Pokrovsk-Nezova road. While this may not be a critically important road, the railway route is of significant value, he noted. Russians are currently advancing toward the Pokrovsk-Pavlohrad direction, attempting to encircle Pokrovsk and cut logistics without engaging in heavy urban combat. However, given the determined resistance of Ukrainian defenders, they may become bogged down in urban battles for Pokrovsk if they fail to outflank it. But even if the Russian advance on the flanks is slow, or even if it fails to materialize, the Russian progress so far has already caused significant damage to Ukraine, in particular with its economy.
I'm here with President Zelensky. I am such an admirer of what you and your country have done. You're trying to stop the Russians so we don't have to fight them. They don't want any American troops. They just need the weapons to free their country of a terrible invasion. They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy.
Ukraine has halted coking coal production at a mine in Pokrovsk, which fed the country's entire metallurgical industry due to the approach of Russian troops. Reuters wrote about this with reference to sources in the Ukrainian industry. It is noted that the Pokrovsk enterprise, which is located in the combat zone, is the only mine in Ukraine that produces coking coal, which is necessary to the country's once giant steel industry, which has collapsed after the Russian invasion in February of 2022. Russia's invasion led to the destruction of the country's leading steel mills. Ukraine, previously a major steel producer and exporter, reported a 70% drop in production in 2022 to 6.3 million tons. In 2023, it fell to 6 million tons, the agency said. Reuters sources said that the mine has already stopped working. In quotations, "There is no production there. They are only working on the surface," one of the sources said, adding that evacuation of employees is underway. According to the National Coke Association, in 2023, Ukraine produced about 3.5 million tons of coke exclusively using coking coal mined in Pokrovsk. The Steel Producers Union said last year that the potential closure of the mine could lead to a drop in steel production to 2 to 3 million tons in 2025 from 7.6 million in 2024. The producers said they hope to find alternative sources of coking coal in other parts of Ukraine if the Pokrovsk mine is seized by Russian forces. However, imports would inevitably be required, which would drive up costs. According to trade data, metal exports totaled $4.4 billion in 2024, the money needed to keep Ukraine going for nearly 3 years after a full-scale Russian invasion, Reuters adds. Earlier, Bloomberg said that Kiev's allies must fulfill their promises and provide Ukraine with all the help it needs as soon as possible to prevent Russia from seizing Pokrovsk. Now, the loss of income from coking coal is only one of the many problems that Ukraine faces with Russia's continued advance on Pokrovsk. According to Russian media RIA Novosti, lithium deposits in the area of the liberated village of Shevchenko, which Kiev tried to trade with the West, came under the control of Russia, said the head of the DPR, Denis Pishchane, on the air of the TV channel Russia 24. In quotations, the Ukrainian enemy held the settlement and built quite serious fortifications there, and this was probably also due to the populism that we saw on Zelensky's part. He had already traded in reserves, subsoil, and offered it in the media publicly if more active support was provided, i.e. Western assistance to Ukraine. I will remind you that there are lithium deposits near the settlement of Shevchenko. They are really interesting for the West as a whole, but at the moment it's all under the control of the Russian Federation, he said. According to Pishchane, now all the subsoil will benefit the residents of the DPR and Russia. He also noted that Russian units continue to advance. In quotation again, due to the fact that Shevchenko is under our control, there is an additional opportunity to advance to the next settlements, and the Ukrainian enemy has fewer and fewer opportunities to gain a foothold on the approaches to Pokrovsk. Russian troops liberated Shevchenko on January 11th. Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov congratulated the command and personnel of the 74th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade on this achievement. Now, meanwhile on the ground, presently, the Russian steamroller continues to advance with limited restriction. According to RIA Novosti again, Russian troops took control of the village of Pishchane, according to the Ministry of Defense. As a result of the decisive actions of the units of the Group of Troops Center, the settlement of Pishchane of the Donetsk People's Republic was liberated, the summary says. In addition, the fighters of the center defeated units of 8 mechanized brigades of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and 2 brigades of the National Guard of Ukraine in the areas of Vozdivizhenka, Lysivka, Novovaselivka, Petropavlovka, and Novolizavetovka. And thus, it is not only the constant losses, both manpower and territorially, that can overwhelm Ukraine with the fall of Pokrovsk, but more importantly, the economic loss due to the Russian capture of significant parts of their mining industry. And this is perhaps why retired U.S. Colonel Daniel Davis titled his article recently this way.
Если ты не шерохнешься, здесь что?
I will proceed to read the relevant parts of this article for you. The retired colonel notes that the Russian army is nearing Pokrovsk, a vital logistical hub for Ukraine's eastern front, with its fall threatening to collapse Ukraine's defenses in the region. Pokrovsk's 8 major roads and key rail station are critical for resupplying and reinforcing Ukrainian troops. Without it, cities like Chasiv Yar may become unsustainable, leaving Ukraine vulnerable to deeper Russian advances. If the city falls in early 2025, the entire eastern front could collapse. This risk is far higher than many in the West believe is possible. You see, conventional thinking is that since Russia took the better part of a full year to capture a series of towns and villages in eastern Ukraine, like Avdiivka, Ugledar, and Selidove, even if Pokrovsk falls, it will still take the Russian army another year to move a commensurate distance further. Some analysts seem to be banking on the hope that Russia's offensive cannot maintain that steam for another year, and at some point will get bogged down and forced into a tactical pause. For example, the Institute for the Study of War reported in mid-November that Russia may not be able to sustain its current rate of armored vehicle and tank losses in the medium term. Because of this alleged deficiency, Russia cannot maintain its current tempo indefinitely. Yet much evidence suggests that these views are not well grounded. Since that assessment, the city of Kurykove has fallen, Toretsk is hanging by a thread, and Ukrainian defenders lose ground in Chasiv Yar by the day. Aside from the huge casualties the Ukrainian side loses daily, some reports suggest upwards of 200,000 men have deserted the Ukrainian armed forces. Forbes reported that over 1,500 Ukrainian men from the 155th Brigade, trained in France and equipped with modern Leopard 2 tanks, ran away from the unit before it even arrived at the front. And many of my viewers will know that I made a video about this, which right now is my highest viewed video for this channel. Russia, meanwhile, continues to expand its defense industrial base to produce more weapons and ammunition to sustain the war effort. In short, all the fundamentals necessary for building national combat power are trending in a positive direction for Russia and a negative direction for Ukraine. This imbalance has been brewing for months and will likely expand further in 2025. Such fundamentals are impervious to spin, and no matter how much those in the West and Ukraine may wish it were not, these factors manifest on the battlefield. In all probability, the speed of Russian advances will accelerate further into 2025, when the war will begin. Pokrovsk, he says, is key to how long or even if the Ukrainian armed forces can continue to offer stiff resistance.
Нет, я когда кричу бежать, надо бежать.
And here are some final words to end this video. Nothing in war is ever ordained, and things could change rapidly. But militarily speaking, Ukraine is in a dangerous position. If its leaders continue pretending they could fight on indefinitely, not acknowledging the deteriorating condition of its ability to keep fighting, the Ukrainian side could lose the war on the battlefield. That is a sobering thought, but such possibilities should animate their leaders now, while there is still time to reach a negotiated settlement. Wait too long, and Kiev may be faced with a horrible possibility of receiving terms of surrender instead.